Okay, morning everybody. So I'm going to be presenting today about reading skills, but how we educate, which sounds really condescending, educate staff and give them an understanding and help them to integrate skills into their learning plans. So I'm going to take you through a couple of interactive events or training events that I did with staff and a couple of ideas that we've had along the way, working as a team, just to show you how we've given staff more confidence when delivering reading skills cross curricular. Okay, so just to give you a bit of context, in Lewis Girls, I emphasise constantly that literacy is everybody's responsibility. So it's not just down to the English department or a few other departments, it's everybody's responsibility. So we work in LDT teams, so learning development teams. So we have I Create, which is the creative subjects, music, art, drama. We have I Communicate, which is English and languages. I Discover, which are the sciences. I Thrive, which is well-being and PE. I Calculate, which is obviously maths. And then I Explore, that's the STEM, humanities, etc., etc. Okay, just to give you a bit of context. So what we found, we hit a bit of a problem, and I just want to emphasize it wasn't every department and every member of staff, but it was quite a few. So I was involved in SLT book scrutinies a while back and also lesson observations, and it was evidencing that staff were missing opportunities to develop a variety of reading skills in lessons. So we were going through books, we were observing lessons, and I kept thinking, now that would be a nice opportunity to summarise, or that would be a nice opportunity to compare, but staff seemed to be missing it. Then I did a student voice, and with Year 8 I did the student voice, and this basically confirmed it. So they weren't being provided with enough reading skills across the curriculum. And when the children were asked about reading skills, they were a little bit confused, a little bit vague. There was no sort of language being used. You know, I questioned them further, and they obviously were a little bit fuzzy on it. Okay, skimming and scanning, they were quite clear on, and evaluating. So you had the two ends, but the ones in the middle, skills in the middle, they were really fuzzy on. So they couldn't identify various skills when being used cross-curricular. So what I did then, I went on to asking staff, so we did a staff voice, and they confirmed as well that they weren't confident in delivering reading skills. And what actually were they? Some staff were asking. And it was, some staff were saying, is it when a child can read out loud well, or read, you know, a huge amount of books and they can articulate the characters? No. We had to go right back to the root. But it would be the same with me, with maths. I wouldn't understand, because I'm an English specialist, I wouldn't understand, you know, how to integrate maths effectively into my lessons. So we had skimming and scanning and evaluating were the most popular. So we needed to get going on the others. So the whole range needed to be implemented consistently across the curricula. So the other thing as well, I wanted reading skills terminology to be explicit in lessons, and I wanted students to be able to use the word summarise, the word compare, the word deduce, infer. Okay, so I had quite a big job on my hands, but I had staff behind me, to be fair to them, because they wanted to learn as well. So, right, the first steps to improvement. We had a whole staff PL session, and I did a little bit at the end, just wanting to know the staff sort of understanding of reading skills. And I wanted it to be an honest, I want to be able to put their hands up and say, I really don't understand this skill. Some staff didn't understand any of the skills completely, if they were really honest. So what I did then, we had a reading ladder, which is basically, you would have probably seen it, a reading ladder with, it was a simple ladder with just the skills on, with no other explanations, which is what we were trying to use across the school, and it just wasn't working. So I improved the reading ladder, updated it, and then I distributed it to staff for them to just have a little look at, which I'll show you the reading ladder in a minute. Staff shared learning plans with me as well, so I look for opportunities to introduce reading skills into the plans, giving some really basic ideas for lessons. So I met with staff and I said, right, at this opportunity, you could summarise. This opportunity would be a nice chance for you to use inference. And they started to understand, particularly humanities, where there was opportunities right the way throughout. In fact, there were so many we had to say, right, this is a bit of an overkill now. We're going to try and reduce it a little bit. So subjects like STEM were using some of the reading skills, but they were saying things like, right, when we finished our project, we need to look what was successful and what we can do to improve. But they weren't using the word evaluate. And I wanted them to try and start thinking of it in sort of subject-specific vocabulary, okay? And as I said earlier, skimming, scanning and evaluating were utilised most often. So this is the reading skills ladder that I distributed to staff. So we rejigged it a bit with more explanations on it. So we've got the skills here, okay, at the ladder, and then an explanation of what they actually are. This has gone out as well. This is on display in classrooms. It's been blown up and put on classroom display. It's in every child's book as well. So in every subject, so they can refer back to it. And also it's been explained in assemblies. It's been explained to parents. It's been put in a newsletter. It's everywhere because then they can keep sort of looking at it. And actually, some children can actually do it off by heart if you ask them. But yeah, so these were the ones that these were skills being frequently used, so we needed to fill those out in the middle. So this is what I did in the professional learning. I held a literal reading skills professional learning, a complete session. I wanted it to be, and I'm sure this is the way forward, interactive. So rather than me just standing there talking at staff, I created actual reading skills exercises that they could do in teams. And their faces were like thunder in the beginning, because I think they were absolutely exhausted and they came in and thought, oh, we don't want to do this. I treated them basically like a group of students, but the response was superb. You know, you could see them. You could almost see like the light bulbs coming on as they were working through the activities. So to start, and a lot of staff were using skimming and scanning. We did a quick skimming and scanning exercise. I used a document entitled Life in the 80s. To try and get them, because a lot of them are old as well. So like me, they were like, oh, I remember that, to try and get a bit of interest as well. So we just did a quick skimming and scanning activity, which I'll show you in a minute. We've also, this helped as well, I produced QR codes for every child on a key fob to carry around on their bag. So what they do, if they're unsure of a reading skill, they can click onto the fob and then you have pre-recorded help from a member of staff, a member from the English department. So if they were even on the beach doing a piece of homework, then they could click on and they could have advice from a member of staff. But staff didn't have this. So it was actually the situation where children were knowing the skills a little bit better than staff. Okay, so I went through the QR codes. I gave them to staff as well, which really helped. I also encouraged staff to use Accelerated Reader and Myon, which I know is quite popular now at the moment, because we're experiencing low reading ages. But I also encourage them to use that because there are so many resources which are cross-curricular, and then they're tested using a range of reading skills. Seneca as well, I'm not sure if you've heard of Seneca, it's an online teaching and learning program. I encourage them to use that because again, you've got lovely cross-curricular reading skills throughout that. Okay, so this was the document I gave them about life in the 80s. I'm not going to make you sit there and read through, but that was the document I gave them, and we had to, or they had to skim and scan. Okay, and I gave them advice then on skimming and scanning, and this is where they had a bit of a light bulb moment. They said, oh, right, now I know what they have to do, because they were just saying in lessons things like read the document, find this, this and this, but with no advice, and they weren't actually using skimming and scanning. Okay, if I click on this, Leanne, do you think it will take me to the link? I'm scared now to do it. Do you think it will be okay? So if they get stuck, this is what the children will see. Please. Oh, there we are. Okay, right, so, and this is what we're giving to staff as well, which they loved. It's painful waiting. I don't think it's going to work. Oh, that's a pity. I won't make you sit there waiting. Right, anyway, it's a member of staff from the English team explaining, skimming and scanning within a minute. So it's not as if they have to watch 5 minutes, it's very condensed, okay, which is what I think staff and children need, okay. So we then went on to focus on explain, summarize, synthesize, as these are the skills very, very rarely used, okay. And again, you could actually see staff thinking, ah, right, I get it. I understand what they mean now. Okay. So then again, staff working with partners, which they really enjoyed, they got a lot from. We talked about tasks that they could use in lessons, which were summarized and synthesized tasks. Okay. So that's what we were focusing on. Okay. And then these are some of the resources I gave them, or this was the resource I gave them. So it's really simple, based on the 1980s text, and they filled that out then, and then they gave some feedback. We had lovely feedback, and it confirmed their understanding for me. So we looked at explain and summarize. Then we have an unfortunate, and I'll try again, but I don't think it's going to work. We had them, I played the 1 minute help video. Oh, this is a bit quicker, might work, don't know. Try again. No. I don't know how I can send those, Leanne. What's the best thing to do with that? It'll be in the presentation anyway, so if you need it, then let me know. Okay, so then this was staff advice for explain and summarize. Okay, so I gave them just 4 and 3-step advice with the QR codes for the children to see and the staff to see. Okay, they love the QR codes. Okay, and then we went on to a couple of weeks later, PL2. So this was tackling now a different range of reading skills. In between the 2 PLs, though, we needed to sort of keep it going rather than saying, well, this is this, and then weeks later, that's that. We needed to keep it going. So I organised, which is coming up now, a Love Literacy Day, a school Love Literacy Day. And every member of staff teaching Key Stage 3 on that day had to deliver and explain or summarise skill throughout their subject. And I walked around and I looked at what different staff were doing. They provided then feedback after that. But the Love Literacy Day is now a termly event because it worked so well. And it was showing staff then that they did have the confidence to deliver, explain and summarise in lessons. The other thing I did as well, I looked at 2 different students with 2 different abilities from year 7, and I tracked their progress over a half term. I had a huge art folder. This is the size of the folder. This is the size of the folder. And students would come with work they were proud of, and staff would come with work they were proud of as well, based on the reading skills, and we were putting it into the folder in order to visually track progress. And this worked really well. When I had to feedback to SLT, I just put it on the table and I said, right, this is the beginning of the term, this is the end of the term. And it was unbelievable, the difference between the beginning and the end of the term with relation or in relation to those skills they were using. Again, I said we had positive feedback from the PL1. We discussed progress within, where we'd come, constantly talking about progress. I would dip in then to SLT meetings and discuss progress with them. Let's have a look. English department staff noticed students having a much better understanding of the skills as they were teaching them. And then we moved on to, when we knew that was embedded, we moved on to compare, contrast, deduction and inference. So this was PL2. Okay, so there you can see I showed this reading skills. I'd be sick of the sight of this ladder. I showed this reading skills and I highlighted what we were going to focus on with, again, explanations. And they were used to looking at this by this point. Okay. So I gave them this time for the younger members of staff, Life in the 90s. Okay, so an article about life in the 90s. And I gave them, obviously, because it's a comparison exercise, a blog then by the Bearded Gentleman, again about life in the 90s. So 2 different approaches to life in the 90s. And then I gave them a series of exercises and resources. This one here, they use often, they display in the classroom across the whole school. Little things like this, which again, they can help them and the students when doing these different skills. This was the inference task I gave them, inference and deduction, and staff actually had to fill in partners with these sheets in and then provide feedback at the end. Again, their understanding was so much better. Then we went on to compare and contrast, so looking at the same and what's different. Now, humanities with compare and contrast did this quite often, because they were comparing and contrasting 2 different sources, etc. A lot of other departments, I'll be honest, didn't understand at all, so I gave them some examples. We looked at the difference between alligators and crocodiles, and as I said before, it's like a light bulb moment. You could see them saying, oh, right, I get it. So we were using the Venn diagram to compare the 2 texts I'd given them about life in the 90s. Okay, so then we had another update after completing the 2 PLs. So students, this is a student voice now I completed, just to confirm understanding. They were then able to recognise the reading skills they'd been utilising in lessons across curriculum. And then they were talking about the skills most frequently used, including summarising, explaining, comparing and contrasting. And they were freely, explicitly talking about these skills. So there we are. I've actually put it in quotes. This is what they were saying. In humanities and science, we were asked to summarise. We were purposely given information which is so long we can't copy it out. We then asked to read through and summarise it. And Leslie, the head of science, was using the 5-point summary advice I'd given her. In PE, we were asked to summarise activities and rules to our friends. For example, the 400-metre relay rules. We were asked to explain the activities to a partner. In humanities, we were asked to compare texts from 2 different people from different religions. So they were freely talking about this. It was incredible to listen to. I had the head sat in with me as well, and she couldn't believe the difference. Okay, so where are we now? So we now have a termly Love Literacy Day. We've got it coming up now on December the 1st, where, as I explained earlier, staff deliver reading skills in Key Stage 3 lessons for the day, and then they feed back to me and I share the feedback. Lesson observations. There's evidence now of a variety of skills across the curriculum delivered with improved confidence and understanding. We've still got a little way to go, but there's much more confidence with staff. Book scrutinies as well. There's much more evidence in the book showing the different skills being used, not just skimming, scanning and evaluating. Student voice, students are able to articulate the skills they're using across the curriculum, including some lower ability students as well. Lovely examples of compare and contrast, as I said earlier, in humanities. So what I do then is share work with staff in other PL sessions, and P frequently using summarising skills. We're just hoping now, we've had a bit of a shock, to improve the 56% of Year 7 pupils' reading levels. I think it's the same, well, I hope it's the same across other schools. We've suddenly realised they've got very low reading levels, and we're going to repeat the cycle again, because when I've done a student voice with them, they literally don't understand reading skills at all. This is our new intake now. Okay, the other thing I just wanted to mention, I know I talked about educating staff, parents as well. If you get parents on board with the reading skills, that really helps to reinforce when they're doing independent learning at home. So we hosted, and we do this on a termly basis, a Help Your Child Succeed evening, specifically focusing on reading skills. So in school, we strongly promote flipped learning, which is independent home learning. And I actually asked parents to come in because they didn't understand what reading skills were. It was the same old, well, my daughter's read 50 books in 2 weeks, or my daughter can express or can do character voices. And I'm thinking, no, we need to be talking about summarising, comparing, etc., etc. Okay, so we do this now once a term in order to educate parents, and that has worked really well. It's interactive, so parents can work with their own child on the reading skills. It's differentiated as well. so all abilities can access. And very often the parents desperately need access to these skills. Some students talk now about the tasks they're completing at home with their parents using the resources that we've provided. And then some parents have even contacted the school saying they enjoy the interactive event. Can they have more interactive events in other subjects? Because it's really helped their understanding. Because I'm going to say about maths again, I am hopeless at maths. And I found it very difficult. If my son comes home with some maths homework, I literally have a very, very little understanding. And I feel ridiculous because he's in year 10 and I'm a grown adult. But I literally don't really understand. So I would love something like this for more understanding. The other thing I've done as well is created, it's for whole staff. If they're worried about a child's reading skills or literacy progress in general, I've created a document, it's like a referral form that they can send me and the English team, and we can see the child, what the problem is, and then we can delve a little bit deeper. And that's it really. It's a pity I couldn't show you the videos though, because they're really good. It's yeah, it's just a minute in length, well, less than a minute in length, and they are so helpful for reading skills. So thank you, everybody.